Hi there, folks. This is Jackie Sawicki with the Texas and the National Coalitions Against Crypto Mining, and we're here with another edition of the Proof of Waste podcast. Today, our guest is going to be Jake Donoghue. He is a whistleblower and a crypto insider who wrote an incredible book called The Crypto Confidential. Jake, thank you so much for being here. We really, really appreciate you talking with us today.
Jackie, thanks so much for having me on. Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to be talking to you today.
And obviously, you are British. Are you? And you're in Great Britain.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, based in rainy London.
Nice. And Jake is not your real name. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so Jake Donoghue is a pseudonym. So, like you mentioned, I've just written a book, Crypto Confidential, just kind of lifting the lid, kind of blowing the whistle on some of the illicit activities and the malpractice which takes place in the crypto industry. And obviously, a lot of the content in that book hasn't come out yet before. It has never been published. It's first-hand accounts, inside information, and there are inherent risks with with bringing new information like that to light. Especially when you're dealing with these kind of cartels of incredibly powerful, incredibly well-resourced companies and individuals like you get in crypto. So the publisher, who is taking the book to press, the history press, the legal counsel that they have very strongly advised to publish under a pseudonym. You're dealing with people who are incredibly litigious, who have very strong and long track records of weaponizing the law and using that in their favor. So, yeah, a necessary precaution to write under a pseudonym.
Yeah. Wow. And you talk about your background a little bit in the book, but go ahead and let our listeners know where you came from and how you got into crypto.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, it's something that I've been aware of, and I had been aware of for what seems like forever. So I first got exposure to it way back in kind of 2016, 2017, which doesn't actually seem that far back, but considering it's still a very nascent industry and still a very young industry, back then it was very crude and rudimentary and undeveloped. So got exposure to it then when I was working at a subsidiary of an investment bank, and I was doing their kind of prime brokerage, so derivative sales to hedge funds and that kind of stuff. And I was on the team which launched the first derivatives on some crypto assets. And back then, there really weren't that many. So it was Bitcoin, ETH, XRP, I think Bitcoin Cash, or some other ones like that. They kind of pivoted out of finance and then came back into crypto in, when was it? It must have been 2020, kind of at the end of a period called DeFi summer, which is when the first kind of money markets, decentralized money markets started popping up within the industry. And it's kind of the whole thing just started really taking off. There was a lot of exuberance in the space. This was when kind of Yearn finance started coming into existence, and some of those altcoins, which are still very prevalent today. And yeah, I mean, asset prices were just going through the roof. That's when really the bubble started really, really forming. So I got approached by some contacts of mine saying that they were looking to set up their own crypto project, their own decentralized finance or DeFi project, and asked if I wanted to kind of come on board as the chief communications officer or chief marketing officer. So we did that. The project launched in, when was it? About April 2021, about April, May, that time, that kind of time. And back then, I mean, you could launch anything and it would just go through the roof. So we launched our token with an initial market cap, fully diluted market cap of, I think, $3 million. And on the day of launch, that went up by over 12,000%. So we were sitting on a token which had a fully diluted valuation of over $300 million. So pretty insane. Hadn't ever really seen anything like that. And I mean, that was within an hour or two of it being publicly tradable. The thing is, though, we couldn't really realize any of those, any of that valuation. A lot of the tokens were locked up. People were watching the blockchain. So it would have been very noticeable if, tokens started getting liquidated. So we had this, tremendous growth asset, this growth company. And again, it didn't have any revenue streams either. We didn't have a platform live or any kind of product or anything. Because back then, you'd launch a token as soon as possible and then build the products,
Yeah,
way further down the line. So what we did was we spun out a marketing agency. We had an inbox full of people. We were inundated with marketing requests because we, nailed it in the run up to our token launch. So we spun up an agency, and again scaled that very quickly up to about 40, 50 team members, £1.5 million EBIT, so £1.5 million profit in the first year of trading. Didn't take on any kind of debt or equity financing or anything like that. So that was very successful, and that was the cash flow generation side of things. And yeah, I mean, it was really through it was that was the kind of eye-opening experience. We were working with some of the biggest projects, companies, firms in the industry, real household names, which the biggest firms in the space basically. And when you're working that closely with the C-suite, the decision makers, you really see the inside. You see how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
And it was off the back of that I decided to, some of these things that are happening, some of this malpractice, this market manipulation, just every single financial crime under the sun is taking place. I just thought that, people need to know what's going on and what's actually happening and how these companies are actually being run. Because, like we saw with Terra Luna and FTX, people lost a lot of money. People's lives were ruined, life savings. And it's difficult to really get a full appreciation of that just by reading the news. Behind every headline, that's thousands of lives ruined. So yeah, I got quite disenchanted, left the industry after FTX collapsed, and yeah, spent last year writing the book.
Yeah, and I do want to say I love your writing style. It really does feel like you're in the room, and it's really well written. So kudos for that. I really like your style.
Thanks very much.
I've read a lot of crypto books, and some of them are a little chewy, some are pretty dense and technical, but this one is a very personable, accessible, and also like enraging. I mean, I have not gotten all the way through, but just what I have read is just exactly what you think crypto is it is. One of the things that hit me last night, it was just incredible timing. But our group, the Texas Coalition Against Crypto Mining, was sort of like accused, insinuated of being an AstroTurf group yesterday by a publication, by a supposed, journalist,
Right.
writes for Forbes. And in our initial contact in November, she had asked me how much I had paid Amy Castor and David Gerard to write about what's happening here in Navarro County with riot platforms. And that question was so shocking and appalling to me. It like, that wouldn't have even crossed
Wow.
my mind because it's so unethical. And then I
Yeah.
read that part in your book where that's what's happening in crypto. These people, they just they just copy and paste industry written articles and slap it in one of the, myriad of crypto shill rags is what I call them, like Cointelegraph, Protos, even the stuff that seems to be crypto critical is still very much carrying water for and advertising. And so that was just such funny timing because this supposed journalist, she's not a journalist, Decentra Sue's, obvious financial conflicts of interest. She is like overtly a Bitcoin maxi. And then they have the audacity to accuse organizers and advocates of truly grassroots activists of being astroturfed. It was just, it's projection, which is a lot of what the crypto bros do to others. They just project their like unethical behavior onto others. So that was really shocking. I could not believe she asked me that until I read that part in your book last night. And I said, oh, well, that's how they operate. So that's how she's thinking the rest of the world operates. And it's just not like that at all. So, and
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I know Amy and David. I've been interacting a lot with them on social media and offline as well via email. And I can categorically state that their opinion is not for sale. So I mean, that's just quite quite farcical that this journalist or so-called journalist you were speaking to would even suggest that. And every kind, like exactly like you say, every kind of accusation like that always contains some kind of element of self-reflective truth in it, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Amy Castor ran me through the ringer, making sure that every single claim that I said was
Yeah.
substantiated with evidence and records and stuff. And so for that person to insinuate, well, I see your claims, but I'm not seeing any evidence for them. And I'm like, go look at my Twitter pinned post. I have literal public records that I got from the city of Corsicana about what Riot is doing. It's right there in black and white. This is why I know you're not a journalist, because you haven't actually done any of the work that journalists do. She was, yeah. So, now I'm wondering who paid her to write that article in Forbes about Ripple and Greenpeace and our group, Texas Coalition.
Yeah. I mean, exactly like you say. I mean, the book discusses that at great length. It's called brown envelope journalism. It's when you just pay for favorable coverage. I should state though that legally, so in the book, a lot of, and I say this in the kind of all author's notes at the beginning, a lot of names of people and organizations and that kind of stuff have had to be changed. So I don't mention specifically in the book any outlets or anything like that which have which we worked with, and I mean there's no other way of putting it, but bribed for coverage. So but yeah, I mean it is a practice which is incredibly prevalent in the space, and we were doing that with some of the biggest outlets, some of the biggest names in the industry, paying them that nothing was marked as sponsored, nothing was marked as disclosed or anything like that. In many cases as well, we were, sending funds via the blockchain directly to these journalists. I don't even know if the editors or the owners of the places were aware of it, but it was just going in the journalist's back pocket straight away, and then they would just publish what we wanted them to, and the editors and the owners definitely knew these things were going on, and they were on the payroll themselves as well from some of the bigger projects and the people higher up on the project side of things. But yeah, I mean, it's incredibly prevalent, and it's just one of the ways that these crypto projects, these crypto firms kind of engineer this kind of facade of legitimacy around themselves, by making it seem like they're getting all this kind of organic coverage, but actually, it's all bought and paid for.
Yeah, sort of like the lobbying efforts that they're really going hard on right now in America, at least. I feel like they are presenting a scenario to our legislators that this is just like the most incredible technology and everyone wants a piece. Meanwhile, if you actually look at um, uh, the transactions on the blockchain, it's pretty much flat. It's just like wash trading, and there's really not a whole lot of demand. Like less and less people are using it every year. And also Pew Research had done a study asking Americans who are familiar with crypto if they trusted it, and like 75% of Americans who are familiar with crypto don't trust it. And that was before the FTX trial and before the Hamas funded terrorist
Yeah,
attacks and before,
yeah,
Binance's sentencing and stuff. So Americans don't want this, but these they have this entire machinery uh,
yeah.
driving this narrative of any day now, just around the corner, there's going to be adoption. So, and speaking of, lobbying and governmental stuff, how do you view your government over there across the pond? Um,
Hmm.
how are you pushing for any kind of legislation? Have you contacted any of your, representatives, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so before I get into that, just to address something that you just mentioned, you're absolutely spot on with the wash trading and things like that. It's just another way that these projects and these blockchain companies, another tool that they use to engineer a false picture of health around their own protocols or networks or the industry as a whole. I mean, I know from firsthand experience the volumes are all washed. We when our token was trading on a centralized exchange, obviously on the day of launch, the volumes were sky high. After that, it flatlined, right? We were down to what, I don't know, a few hundred or maybe even a few $1,000s of volume a day. So we got in touch with this exchange and we said, well, what's going on? How can we promote the volume? And they were like, no, no, don't worry, we'll just turn the volume bot on. And then just like that, they flipped a switch and the volume was up at, a few million, a few $1 million a day. And then again, that just encourages people and makes them think that it's a healthy, functioning market, but actually it's not. It's just a complete lie. So you're completely spot on there. In terms of the advocacy side of things, yeah, I mean that's something that I've been involved in a bit so far, but plan to do a lot more. So, for example, I've been speaking with various MPs in the UK. So I spoke to Tulip Sadiq, who's a Labour MP
Mhm.
in UK Parliament, very, very staunch anti-crypto proponent, one of the loudest voices in UK Parliament, warning people about some of the dangers of this. I'm reluctant to call it a technology, but of this stuff, and encouraging, really, really pushing for legislation to try and tame it and bring it within the scope of the regulators. Now, I sent her an advanced copy of the book, sent her team that. So hopefully, that I mean, I very much hope that gets some references in UK Parliament. I'm going to be keeping a very, very close eye on select committees. So in the UK, we have a very, very robust process of select committee inquiries, which is, basically a panel of kind of crossbench, so bipartisan MPs, and they scrutinize government activity and legislation and things like that. So next time one of these inquiries takes place looking into blockchain, digital assets, or whatever, I'll be looking to submit evidence, written or oral evidence to that inquiry. And just things like that, if there's ever debates or anything like that that's going on, I keep quite a close eye on, UK parliamentary website, the upcoming calendar of events. I'll be, writing to the people, the MPs, ministers taking part in that kind of stuff, and making suggestions and providing them with information and resources which they can hopefully use to shape the discourse around this topic. But unfortunately, this is a topic which is under-indexed in Parliament. I think we need to be talking more about it. I think legislators really need to keep up with what's going on. It's difficult for them to keep up with such a fast pace, emergent and esoteric technology. Esoteric by design, I
Right.
would say as well. So, I'm very keen to lend whatever kind of insight or expertise I can.
Yeah, that's awesome. How would you grade at this point so far your government's response to this? I think, like you said, they really do kind of overwhelm legislators with this mountain of, you know, manipulative, obfuscated bullshit. And if you don't know any better, if you don't have a degree in all of this stuff, or you haven't gone down the rabbit hole, it can sound quite legitimate. So how has your government, in the past couple years, really since the big bubble and the crash too, how have they
Mm.
responded to this industry?
Yeah, not as well as the US, I would
Yeah.
say. Not as well as the US, and I don't think the US has responded, particularly well.
Yeah.
Um, However, we have seen, some of the regulatory bodies, in particular the SEC, really, really clamping down, and doing what they can to bring, some of the perpetrators of the malpractice in the last cycle to, bring them to book, bring them to justice. And, the SEC has been issuing a lot of fines, been issuing a lot of legal action, against some of these individuals who especially were promoting it, and some of these, companies operating, not just in a grey area, but in, outright, outright illegally. In the UK, we've seen some of that, but not to the same extent. So the FCA, in conjunction with organisations like the ASA, the Advertising Standards Authority, they have been issuing new rules and new guidance around the promotion of crypto assets. They have been fining people and firms who have been in breach of that. Back in, a few years ago, you see kind of crypto ads for just complete, just awful projects. You'd see them plastered all over the tube. You'd see them on buses and that kind of thing, just promoting, Shiba Inu, whatever. promising like 1,000,000% APY returns.
Right.
And that's now stopped. A lot of those companies got fined for doing that. So they have been doing something, but I really think that there is more that can be done.
Yeah. What is one of your worst fears about the industry?
Um, I mean, the industry is a bit of a hydra. You cut off one head and then two emerge straight away. So, NFTs, remember them? So they're basically dead now. No one's talking about NFTs anymore. That narrative's died.
Runes, though.
But, sorry?
Runes and ordinals.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, compared to, I don't know, the Bored Ape Yacht Club or, the stuff that we were seeing in the last cycle and just, thousands and thousands of, basically the same project, but different iterations springing up each day. And now, exactly like you say, you've got runes, ordinals, and maybe a few others. So, not quite dead, but, dying, last gasps of that. But no, but the narrative, I think, is pretty much not there anymore, and definitely not in the same way that it was. But you've got so many other things instead. Even I've got like, meme coins is the newest hype, and it's difficult for people to keep up with that and keep on top of that. And as soon as you get rid of one scam, 10 more pop up. And the technology, the infrastructure which facilitates these scams is getting a lot more advanced, and it's a lot more accessible. So, pump.fun on the Solana network. It's something crazy, like there's, what, 10, 15,000 new tokens, new meme coins being launched per day. Something like in the last like 3 months, there have been more tokens launched than in the entire history of cryptocurrency. And they're all on either the Solana or the base network, just the Coinbase layer two. Just because it's so easy to do this, pump.fun, you don't even need to know what Solidity is to launch a token on that. You don't have to have any technical expertise whatsoever. Just anyone and anyone's grandmother can launch a token on there. And again, that's why the vast majority of them are rug pulls as well. The vast majority of them are scam. The overwhelming majority of them are scams. So that's a concern. Just the ease with which scams and rug pulls are able to take place, I think, is a concern. And also, I think personally, my biggest concern is that people just forget what happened.
Right.
Every day I see some influencer on social media who, in the last cycle, their reputation was in the dirt because they started or promoted, just an outright fraud or scam token. And now they've just rehabilitated themselves. They've got a whole new audience set with new people coming in into the industry, into the market because of the asset price appreciation that's been taking place. And people just forget about the illicit stuff they were doing, just what, 18 months ago to 24 months ago. So, that's really a big reason why I actually wrote this book, just to serve as a record of what actually happened. So, in the hope that, it goes some way towards preventing that stuff from happening again. I mean, the last chapter is actually called Grifter's Groundhog Day. And I go on to say that, I think this is just going to happen again and again unless people, take note and just avoid it basically and just steer well away.
Yeah, it's really surprising, when I 2 years ago when I got into this advocacy, it was because Riot Platforms announced they were bringing the world's largest Bitcoin mine to our county. And shortly after that was the big, well, first it was Terra Luna. I think that was like June, July.
Yeah.
And in November, it was Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX. And I thought, fine, cool, it's over. This industry is like totally on its last legs. Miners can't survive with prices like this. And
Hmm.
yet, miners like Riot Platforms who are subsidized and have welfare given to them by the people of Texas, they, like cockroaches, they survived. And now, because of manipulation in the market, like we just saw today, Tether printed another billion. So, and
Yeah.
Bitcoin hit 70K yesterday. So it does feel like Groundhog Day. I mean,
Yeah.
and people say don't even pay attention to the price anymore because it's so manipulated. But it's hard not to when they're pumping it, and that ensures these miners' continuation of existence, even though, there's been the least amount of Bitcoin wallets moving, which means like
Mm.
they're like gone, dead, lost, whatever. There's no
Yeah.
actual transactions happening, and yet the price is spiking. The lobbyists are going full tilt. I mean, they're spending almost as much as the big pharmaceutical companies in lobbying last year and this year. So it's so weird reality. And of course, there's always been a disconnect in reality with this industry, but like reality versus what if you just like lived in the bubble is like so discongruous. Um,
Yeah.
I I had a question about, oh, can you, so just recently the SEC or the DOJ came down on two, I think it was like Harvard's alumni that had done some MEV bot. Do you
Oh,
understand
sure.
this? Can you explain this to myself and our audience? What's an MEV
It's
bot and what
it's
happened here? Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that I was kind of tangentially or obliquely aware of. I don't know the ins and outs of it or the full technical details of how they pulled it off, but yeah, I mean that was just the kind of headline points were, yeah, two former MIT students, both quite young, I think, both in their early 20s, stole what I think must be 20 something million by exploiting some aspect of the Ethereum network. I'm not sure on the details, so I can get back to you on that. I might post something on Twitter about it, but haven't looked into it. Just looked into the actual, yeah, like you say, the kind of DOJ press release saying they've indicted these two kids, and it's a shame. I mean, they seemed like smart academic guys, and then they just go and they probably just saw a pathway to making fast and a huge amount of fast money, and they took it. So really, really, and now they're facing decades in prison. So I hope that serves as a warning that just because you're acting seemingly anonymously online, just kind of operating in code and that kind of thing doesn't mean that your actions are going to have impunity, and that obviously the law applies to the digital realm as well as the real world.
Yeah.
You wouldn't go into a bank and steal $25 million, would you? So just because you're doing it on the blockchain doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it with impunity.
Yeah. The bros have a saying, code is law. No, law is law. And if you break the law, even if it's using code, you're going to get caught eventually, hopefully. Um,
Yeah, exactly. That's what the Mango Markets exploiters tried to
yeah,
say in his defense.
directly,
He
right.
said, "Well, I was operating within the parameters of the code of the platform, and code is law." It's like, well, no, that's not how it works.
Can you talk about, I think that crypto is an incredibly unique industry. And again, we use that word loosely, like journalist or technology. But
Yeah.
can you talk about how this industry attracts grifters and scammers and also folks, who are easily fooled, who fall for this stuff? Like, what is it about crypto that's just this magic combination that just is like the perfect storm for financial ruin?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really great question. I think actually it ties into what you were just saying before as well, into the some of the Groundhog Day stuff, the collapse of FTX and everything like that. I think what we saw right after the collapse of Luna, the collapse of FTX. I mean, Luna, Terra Luna was a decentralized stablecoin. Without going into the kind of ins and outs of it, supposedly had a lot of tech underpinning it. And same with FTX. They were a supposedly robust, incredibly well-built platform. The word innovation was used so much in the previous cycle. It became a cliche. Right, everyone was talking about disrupting financial markets and just regaining power for the people, that kind of stuff. Since the collapse of these projects, which really engineered a whole veneer of respectability and legitimacy around the industry, after they collapsed, that whole narrative was gone. Now no one's talking about innovation. anymore. And now, what are people talking? They're talking about the memes. They're talking about, the dog tokens, all of that kind of stuff. Because when you, strip away that very tenuous facade of crypto, that's all you're left with. There is really no technical innovation. Crypto is a solution to a problem which does not exist.
Right.
Now, what crypto does have is insane volatility and the potential to make people quote unquote generational wealth, right? And ultimately that's what's attracting people in. Again, it's a meme or an in joke in the industry, like, oh no, I'm in it for the tech.
Mm-hmm.
No one's in it for the tech. And people talk about, we're done with
Right.
fiat money. I'm gonna put all my money into crypto. But like, why are you doing that? Everyone who buys a token does it in the hope to one day sell it for dollars for more than they paid for it, right? And that's what's drawing people in. And it's a lot of these influencers talking about, oh, I called 100x or 1000x meme coin the other day. Like, you don't want to miss out on the next one. So it's a whole industry which is designed to just generate FOMO, so fear of missing out, to lure people in and to promise them that, this generational wealth and, promise them a better life. I mean, I remember when Luna collapsed, I was looking through the Terra Luna subreddit at the time. And there was a post that pinned at the top. I talk about this in the book. There was a post pinned at the top, and it had the national suicide prevention numbers, about 100 different countries. Then a post from the mod saying, don't invest more than you can afford to lose, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of people look at this as a get out of poverty card. And I think that's what these scammers, these grifters prey on. They prey on people's desires and their hopes and expectations, to get people in. Then they use well-known household, because they're so well monetized, so well resourced, they use household name celebrities to do that. And again, to contribute to that veneer of respectability. Kim Kardashian was fined, what was it, 1.2 or 2.1 million, whatever, dollars by the SEC for undisclosed promotions of cryptocurrency. There was a class action lawsuit against Tom Brady and various other people who all promoted FTX. So yeah, they're using these well-known, respected, well-liked figures to promote their highly speculative, highly volatile assets. And then, posting on Instagram and telling people that they can make fortunes by doing it. So it's just, it's the same old, it's the same old grift that you saw, the penny stocks or, like in the Wolf of Wall Street or whatever, just with a far more opaque, far more esoteric, and far more, kind of ADHD technology where, as soon as the one narrative dies, another one pops up. So, you're constantly bombarded with new information, new materials to keep you busy. Something out the shiny thing, another shiny thing is going to come along and, people are going to promise that's going to make you generationally rich.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to note, you'll see the influencers and tout their 100x, but you never hear anybody talking about their for projects that failed or the stuff that they lost money in. So I think there's also this hidden, and I believe it was Zeke, no, it was Jacob and Ben's book,
Oh, easy money.
Easy Money, where they talk about,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a thread of gambling addiction that's almost never acknowledged in this crypto sphere. And we talked about predatory inclusion with Professor Peter Howson on our first podcast. There's just so many
Yeah.
wolves preying on sheep in this industry. And then the sheep forget, they lose, they come right back, to the wolf's den. This is where I have a really hard time having compassion for the bros when how many times are you going to be burnt? How many times are you going to touch the stove and burn your hand before you figure out that this is a scam and that you're not going to get rich? And
Yeah.
not only that, but like by participating in the scam, you're perpetuating the harm, you're ensuring more people are going to get harmed because the scam continues. And like without the crypto bros participation, it couldn't continue. So I have a really hard time I get up to I feel really bad for these guys. They are victims themselves. They're victims of fraud and scam and predatory inclusion. And then you get to the point where you're like, but this is 15 years old. We've seen so many exchanges, so many rug pulls, so many exchanges implode and rug pulls and scams and thefts. And then also like the things that actually are bought by crypto, which is, drugs, assassinations, you know,
Mm.
child
Yeah.
pornography, that kind of stuff. Excuse me, exploitation materials. And
Mm.
it's really hard for me to know that these guys are victims and they are being scammed. But when you try to breach that subject in good faith, I cannot tell you how many times I've been told you're just jealous that you didn't get in early, have fun staying poor. And so like there's just the
Yeah.
huge gap between where I know and I feel very bad for them and I hope that they don't lose everything. But then on the other hand, that might be the only way that they're going to learn. Like if you don't have any more
Mm.
money to gamble on, then you can't gamble in the casino anymore. So there's two sides of me there. What do you think? What do you wish that everyone knew about crypto? And I feel like we might have an answer to this in your book, but what do you wish everyone knew about crypto?
So I mean, so many things. I mean, I also wait. So just kind of come back to the a couple of points you mentioned just now. I mean, I completely agree. But also I think it's important to remember that it is obviously the wolves preying on the sheep, but also the wolves preying on the wolves. I mean, again, like you said, the kind of gambling aspect of it. I mean, everyone who's deeply into crypto, I think, is a is an incorrigible gambler. For example, look at Alameda. This supposedly at the time anyway, before they were found out to be, just the most egregious frauds, they were considered to be some of the smartest traders in the industry, running one of the most successful funds. Obviously that was all a complete lie, but they were 5 times leverage long on Luna and blew up during that. Alameda were by some accounts insolvent back in May when Terra Luna collapsed, and then that's when they had to start using FTX customer deposits as an ATM. And again with Galois Capital, Kevin Zhao's fund, he was a kind of self-proclaimed oracle. He called the demise of Luna, shorted Luna and UST all the way down, and got wiped out by FTX because he had half of his fund on FTX. So, anyone who kind of, if these kind of quantitative traders and supposedly incredibly smart people are getting conned and are losing their money, then what chance does the average, the kind of average retail investor with $1,000, kind of what chance do they have against this cartel of insiders, if even the other insiders are falling victim to it? So yeah, I mean, the advice there is just to kind of avoid at all costs. I think in terms of what I wish people knew about the industry, I mean, just so many things. Just it is all just completely fake. Is what I would say. Um,
Thank you.
like every aspect of it.
Yeah.
That these companies aren't companies. They're all registered in these very kind of exotic offshore domiciles like the BVI or the Seychelles, and they pay law firms. They pay the biggest law firms in the world to issue official legal opinions, that whatever, they're not a gambling company or they're not a security or whatever. The law firms don't care. It's really a race to the bottom. You can start playing the law firms off one another to get the cheapest opinion possible, because the law firms don't care. They put their opinion out for hire, and the domiciles that they operate within, that there's no kind of judiciary system, there's no rule of law, so there's no repercussions. But even if there were, these law firms are all covered by huge insurance companies. They have massive indemnity policies, meaning that they're fine from prosecution. So they're just making a quick buck. I mean, the auditors as well. Everyone's like, oh, it's the project auditors. The auditors are in on it as well. The auditors get paid by the projects. Then sometimes very often they take payment in allocations. They're taking pre-sale project tokens.
Yeah, that was
Um,
an incredibly shocking revelation in your book.
Yeah. And and the rest of it as well. I mean, I've been in Telegram groups with project founders and market makers and 50 influencers in there, and the project says, okay, we're going to send out this big announcement, whatever, this partnership announcement. Let's all just pump it, just get the news out there to as many people as possible. They'll put it out, the influencers will shill it. The market maker will be on standby with a pool of project tokens. And as soon as the price starts going up, the market maker will be liquidating, team allocations, VC allocations, treasury tokens, whatever. A lot of the hacks, there was so much stuff to talk about that most of it didn't get into the book. So I might have to put it into a sequel. But a lot of the hacks that happen in the space are projects hacking themselves.
Right.
I've worked with projects where the CTO has hacked themselves on instruction of the CEO to so they can just leave and walk away and say, it's not our fault. We ran off. We were victim to a hack. So every kind of narrative is just complete. It's all just made up.
Right.
None of it's real.
And how has it been, quote, changing sides? Like, have you lost friends? What do you think about looking back now on investors in your project? What do your former friends and colleagues think about your book? Have you been in contact with anyone?
Have not. Um, haven't spoken to the people I used to work with since I left, actually. I don't even know if they're aware of the book. I hope doubtless they will be at some point. And yeah, I know we'll have to see what happens there. But yeah, I mean, I kind of just I say it, I say it at the end of the book, kind of wish I'm not kind of wish, I do wish that I just kind of avoided it from the start, never got in bed with the crypto bros. But then again, if I hadn't, then I wouldn't have had all this, wouldn't have all this kind of inside knowledge, which I'm getting out into the into the public domain, which should hopefully serve as a cautionary tale to other people, which is why I'm incredibly grateful and appreciative of the publisher of taking this story to market. They're a really great publisher. They're very big independent nonfiction press. And this is their first crypto title that they put out there. So, without that information, and this story just wouldn't have been told, it wouldn't have reached the audience that it's going to. And a lot of people would still, hopefully the book is widely read and it reaches a big audience so that, people know how things really work in the industry. And that, if it deters at least a few people from getting involved, then I think that's, some kind of silver lining to have come out of the whole situation.
Yeah. And what was the process like in the book vetting? I'm sure that there's some kind of like fact checking and stuff like that that your publisher wanted to do. What was that process like in such an opaque industry, like you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's important to state this very explicitly. I kept the receipts.
Mm.
So I've got caches of however many thousands and thousands of emails, screenshots, whatever messages, that kind of stuff to substantiate everything. All the events in the book. I mean, the book is, I think, it's a good split between I'm not sure exact percentages, but I don't know, let's say 50-50 between kind of first-hand accounts and stuff that I saw, and then also kind of how that then relates to some of the bigger, more well-known cases of fraud in the industry. And what I was trying to show there was how the scams and the kind of orchestration of it all, it's all the same. So whether it's kind of Alameda, blurred lines with FTX and that kind of stuff, that is exactly the same as the relationship between so many projects and their market makers. Alameda were the largest market maker on FTX, and that's no, that's not exclusive to them.
Right.
All market makers are up to their necks in it, basically. And I kept pitch decks and all this kind of stuff from these kind of service providers, these partners that we were working with. So yeah, of course, it's all very all very substantiable. And yeah, there was a lot of due diligence that went involved. There was
I figured there
lit
have to be.
a literary agent, is the first kind of step, getting a book published, and then the publisher, and then there's a whole legal team who review it very meticulously. So yeah, very, very thorough on that front.
Yeah, you used the word, I think, coordination. There was an anecdote in the FTX failure where like some of the biggest heads of exchanges were all in a group chat like titled like market manipulation or something like that. You know what I'm talking about? Like it's so overt. I also think it's really funny and apropos and karmically just beautiful that when these frauds do go to trial, it's their own words, it's their own screenshots, their own text messages that are the most damning, like Binance's text about, we're getting AKs for ISIS or something like that. I mean, these kind of things that they know what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
And this is another thing why I truly believe that the industry is populated by sociopaths because when you choose to make profit over um, anything else, when you prioritize making a profit over doing what's right and maybe not funding terrorism or helping facilitate the worst crimes for the worst humans in the world, there's something wrong there. Like there's just something
Mm.
rotten in this industry that so many people can turn a blind eye to like
Yeah.
obviously horrific. And we talk about this in our first podcast. Every single year is a new record year of criminals utilizing the blockchain for crime.
Mm.
So
Mm.
um it's just one of those things.
Yeah.
If there was one
Yeah,
person
absolutely.
you could talk to about crypto, who would it be?
If there was one person I could talk to about crypto, that is a good question. Maybe I don't know, maybe like Suzu, he was the one of the founders of Three Arrows Capital. Or I don't know, maybe someone who's like still very active, but who was really up to their neck in it in the last cycle. Maybe Duke Kwon. He's arrested, but yeah, CZ maybe or SBF, one of these people, and just yeah, there's so much stuff I'd want to talk to them about. I was actually thinking of potentially trying to reach out to SBF. I mean, he's got a lot of time on his hands now with the decades of imprisonment he's got ahead of him. But we'll see about that. So yeah, I mean, maybe someone like that to really kind of dive kind of into exactly what they were doing. And I think a lot of these interviews that they gave in the wake of their collapses, the journalists either didn't know what they were talking about or wanted to be sympathetic or something, or it was someone who was formerly on the payroll or something. So a lot of the questions they got asked were very, very insipid. So there's still a lot of things which need answers. So someone who would potentially be able to provide some of that. Either that or someone with a real ability to actually change things. So obviously, the Prime Minister, um, or Jeremy Hunt, the what's it called? The First Lord of the Treasury, or Treasury Secretary, or whatever his title is. Yeah, maybe some kind of senior politician, to kind of really let them know, what the full extent of the of the corruption that's underpinning what is a significantly large industry.
Um, Couple more questions. Do you have any opinions, insights, inside knowledge about what the hell is going on with Tether?
Um, I mean, Tether is a different beast. In itself. I mean, it's probably you could do a whole podcast series just on Tether.
Do an episode on Tether.
They are discussed in the book. I've just actually the kind of final round of edits before the book goes to print. I've just inserted a longer section on Tether, but all stuff that's kind of in the public domain. So I mean, they are really just rotten to their core. I mean, one of their co-founders was a guy called Brock Pierce,
Oh, yeah.
who's used to be a child actor. He was in the Mighty Ducks, and I mean, this guy is just as sleazy, I mean, as it gets. So he used to live in this villa in Spain. with another kind of tech entrepreneur, tech founder he ran a failed.com kind of website, and the police raided the house that these guys were living in, and they just found just an insane arsenal of guns and then knives and that kind of stuff, and also just a vast quantity of child pornography, which is obviously sickening.
Recurring theme in crypto.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, Brock denied having anything to do with that. And I don't actually think he was tried or found guilty, but his roommate, his housemate, he was found guilty of child sex trafficking. And I mean, there are allegations against Brock for other stuff. He allegedly drugged colleagues at kind of work parties. I mean, he spoke about crypto at a conference which Jeffrey Epstein organized, and just incredibly sleazy and suspicious stuff like that. And I mean, there's obviously the well-known stuff. They denied having any kind of association with Bitfinex, and then obviously it came out in the Paradise Papers that they were owned by the same company, iFinex. So they've been caught out lying multiple times in the past, and then just recently, a few months ago, the UK and US launched an investigation into tens of billions of dollars worth of sanctions evasions. Russia, evading sanctions using Tether, kind of routing kind of ill-gotten crypto funds through a Russian exchange. So, in many ways, they are really the kind of the dark heart of the crypto industry. Now, we had some exposure directly to them, and in particular to some of their legal team, but I will probably have to get that checked with the publisher's legal counsel about whether that kind of stuff can be included. So stay tuned for that. I mean, I really hope it can be. But I mean, even the stuff in the public domain is, I think, stuff that a lot of people aren't potentially not aware of, which is just kind of as shady as it gets, really.
Yeah, and so you said how long have you been out? Like what and was there and I'm sure you talk about it in the book, I might just not have gotten there yet, but was there a light bulb moment, like a switch that you're just like, this is awful, or was it like a step-by-step gradual awakening to how really fraudulent and awful this stuff is?
Yeah, I mean, as we kind of got deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole, and especially started working with a lot of the more prominent companies, prominent projects in the space, then more and more revelations came to light, and you really realize that it's not just a few bad actors. I mean, it is everyone. So that was a gradual realization. And again, in the book, there is this kind of gradual sense of disenchantment and just the sheer level of unpleasantness that that you're exposed to every day. It builds and it compounds, and then the market meltdown, everything like that. That just magnified everything.
Wow.
People who were, a bit of a nightmare at the best of times. That just amplified their sociopathy of their megalomania by an order of magnitude above what it was. So but it was really the wake of Terra Luna, I think, for me, which is when I was like, I need to get out of this. There were just the most awful stories coming out of that. I mean, I discussed in the book, it's not just people's lives and money which was lost in that, but there were deaths off the back of that. There were, in particular, one very visceral case of a South Korean man, drove his car into a lake with his wife and kids in the car. Because of Terra Luna, police searched his hard drive and his computer later, and he had lost all of his funds. And he'd been Googling, ways to commit suicide and that kind of stuff. And it was at that moment when I was just, but then, again, in these Terra Luna forums, people were talking about, the next project that Duquan was starting and how they were going to make it all back, and people were still building stuff on the broken network, and it was just delusional. And after that, I was just like, well, I probably don't want to work in this industry for very much longer. So then, yeah, and then obviously after FTX, that's when I was like, okay, yeah, I'm out.
Yeah, same with Celsius. I mean, there was some serious fallout, and even to this day, The bag holders of Celsius, the bankruptcy, they are being exploited and victimized all over again with this insane scheme to get all their money back with Bitcoin mining, which, as everyone knows, is just a super profitable uh, business to get in. I'm being sarcastic. It's not. So they stole these people's money, and instead of giving them their money back, the judge of the bankruptcy okayed Celsius turning into a Bitcoin mining company. So it just feels like another
Blimey.
gay level of gambling. And I also do want to point out Bitcoin and crypto people call themselves degenerate gamblers as well. So I say that
Oh
some,
yeah.
on
Yeah,
Twitter, but I'm not the one saying it. They call themselves that. Um, so how far do you plan on taking this? Like, are you going to stay in the fight with us? No, I'm just kidding. Are you here for the long haul, or you're writing your book, you're getting it off your chest, and then you can go to sleep knowing you did your part? Like, what is your end end goal with this advocacy?
yeah. I mean, it's a great question. I'm definitely in it for the long haul. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I think you know, just from what I saw in the industry and everything like that, I don't think it's something I could ever really walk away from while this stuff is going on, and while I still have a message to kind of get out there. And it'd be very irresponsible, and if I'm being completely frank, it'd be very selfish of me to do that, just to be like, well, whatever, I've written this book, got the message out now, my hands are clean. Wash my hands of it and walk away. No, I mean, while these scams and frauds are still going on, you still need voices speaking out against them. And there are people, like yourself, and I was talking to Bitfinex, and people like Parrot Capital, and been speaking to them a lot recently, and they've been at this for years, and if more people had listened to them, then a lot of damage and a lot of financial harm would have been avoided. They work very tirelessly to try and protect people from some of these scams and from some of these frauds which they have a very comprehensive and thorough understanding of. So I do see it as something of a bit of a, without wanting to sound too pious, something of a bit of a moral obligation to, while these things are still going on, to speak out against them. So yeah, I mean, I don't see myself walking away from it anytime soon, if I'm honest.
That's great to hear. I appreciate that.
Plus, like I said, there's so much stuff that couldn't make it into the book because of space constraints that
Yeah.
sequel may very well be on the cards. Yeah.
You believe there are any legitimate use cases of crypto? Is crypto the future of finance? Is there any there?
Is it the future of finance? It's definitely not the future of finance. I mean,
Yeah,
what does it do that can't already be done with traditional financial systems? And, I mean, you mentioned earlier, this kind of narrative of mass adoption and people saying, well, if this happens, then we'll get mass adoption. Mass adoption is not an end in itself, and it's not something that should be, that you should strive for just for its own sake. Mass adoption is a consequence or a function of actual utility. What you see so much in crypto is people just trying to kind of retrofit utility onto these useless products that they've built. And saying, oh, this is another great use case for our this problem, which is just people are talking about at the moment. This is another great use case for the token that we built, whatever, how many months ago. But it's like, that's not how it works. The way you bring a product to market is you see what problems currently exist within a marketplace, and then create a solution for that. I mean, crypto, like I said, is a solution to a problem which doesn't exist. You can already do frictionless cross-border remittances.
Yeah.
I was talking earlier on Twitter about, people were talking about crypto, banks the unbanked. I
Ugh.
mean, no, it doesn't, because you can't buy crypto without a bank account. The way the 99.9% of people buy crypto is, through an exchange, through a centralized exchange, or, through MetaMask or whatever. But you need a fiat on-ramp for that. So, I mean, I don't really see what it does,
And a lot
to
of
be
those
honest.
unbanked people don't have bank accounts because they don't have money. So,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think that is one of the biggest fibs in all of crypto, which it just feels like an an industry gaslighting the entire world. But this predatory inclusion, this really predatory language that they use to entice people. And the fact is that the majority of people gambling in crypto are like pretty comfortable folks with disposable income that have that money to lose. Poor people are not using crypto.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I mean, predatory language, all that kind of stuff. Crypto is a very, very aggressive space, and I think that comes down to, what I was saying earlier about, really there being no kind of, technical underpinning. There's no kind of technical foundation for this stuff. It really is, quite pointless. And the asset prices, the valuations, the massively overinflated valuations that you see in the industry are completely speculative. That they're driven by speculation and by hype, which is why the industry is so cultish, which is why people are so defensive and don't, engage in kind of reasoned debate around these products or these assets, because if anyone comes along and criticizes them or critiques them or even questions them, then that is harming these people's investments. And there's really nothing, there's no kind of counter argument that can be put up because there's no kind of substance to it. So what you get is people kind of very violently and aggressively shutting down these debates or being very kind of derogatory or insulting to the person, kind of criticizing their tokens. Because without that, if something threatens that hype and that speculation around the token, then it has nothing to fall back on. You don't see that in equities. If
Right.
someone's holding stock in, I don't know, Disney or AT&T or whatever, and someone else criticizes that holding, you don't see that person, just losing their head and just going on a tirade or, launching into a diatribe against them. No, because that would be mental. But that's what you get in crypto. If someone criticizes your, whatever bag you're holding, people lose their mind because, that threatens the narrative. And really all crypto has that narrative. And
Right.
when that goes, then the asset price collapses, doesn't it?
Yeah, which also is why it's absolutely insane to call yourself a Bitcoin journalist, because you're not a journalist if you have a financial motive to pump your preferred token. You are not an unbiased journalist. You are a shill. So I'm talking to
Yeah.
centrifuges. So what gives you hope? We talk about in this podcast, it can get pretty doom and gloom. It can get pretty dark. So I like to hit it a little on the lighter side. But what gives you hope for the future? Um,
Um, yeah, it's a good question. I think um the the kind of collapse of a lot of the false narratives which surrounded the space in the previous cycle, I mean, I suppose that is quite hopeful. And just the fact that people are really starting to realize that there is no kind of innovation to the space at all. I saw a video online the other day of someone mentioned Bitcoin in, I think it was like a commencement speech or something like that at
oh,
some university, and the entire stadium just started booing and sighing because I think people are getting sick of it. And you see adverts in London on the tube. It's quite creative. Like ads for like dating apps, and they say, like you'll never have to pretend to be interested in crypto again, that kind of thing. So it's becoming a bit of a joke. Just crypto is becoming a bit of a joke, and um, yeah, I was literally at a stand-up comedy night the other night with my friend. It's one of those small ones where the comedian kind of talks to you and asks the crowd questions. And he asked me what I did, and I said, well, I used to work in crypto. And again, there was that kind of like sigh throughout the room. And the comedian was just using that as a for their jokes. So the whole thing is becoming a joke, and no one's really taking it seriously, and no one's kind of pretending anymore that there's any kind of substance underpinning it at all. So I guess that's quite hopeful.
for sure.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that. I love that. I think it is funny too. we are so in crypto Twitter, and I'm, on Reddit, and I'm in the crypto subreddits and all that stuff. But when you
Yeah.
actually, what, they call normies, when a,
Yeah.
when a bro mentions crypto or Bitcoin in a normies thread, I mean, they just get dragged. Like the general public does not like this stuff. When I tell locals, who are not familiar with this subject, when I give them the plain spoken actual reality of what Bitcoin is, the the first thing so many people have told me is that sounds like a Ponzi scheme. And
Yeah.
you'll have like certain supposedly crypto critical people parse hairs about, well, I wouldn't call it a Ponzi scheme because technically, and it's like regular people are not going to split hairs about if it's a Ponzi scheme or a greater fool scheme. They know it's fraud. And that's what is the short and long of it.
Just
Well,
do that
Jake,
on
thank you so,
the
so, so
weekend.
much for getting us an advance copy of the book. So far, it's incredibly entertaining, enraging, well written, engaging. It's a really fun read, fun in that I want to strangle someone. Just kidding. Peace. And then if you have anything else, if you have any website or anything like that, go ahead and please let our audience know how they can find you.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, you can find me on Twitter, J Donoghue, author. Yeah, J DONOUGHUEAUTHOR is my handle on Twitter.
Yeah, and we'll totally link you there too as well. So thank you so
Perfect.
much for your time, your expertise. If I can ask one more question,
Yeah, sure thing.
just what, it might not even like make it to the podcast, but this is my personal curiosity. In crypto, did you witness racism and misogyny like just out in the open?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that was pretty common. If I'm honest. At some of these conferences and that kind of stuff. There'd be very few women there, for example, and the ones, the women which were there, were subjected to, a lot of kind of misogynistic or I mean, it's kind of sexually aggressive or like, just harassment basically. And yeah, on the racism side of things as well. I mean, that's anyone who's ever been in like the kind of forums, like the real like depths and dungeons of crypto, like 4chan and that kind of stuff. It's just astounding. And you do see that in person as well.
Yeah. Yeah. In crypto, I think you're like 4 clicks away from the N word at any one time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Appreciate you verifying that. Uh
Sorry?
I said I really appreciate you verifying that because I think that it is, I share articles constantly about how Bitcoin and crypto have revolutionized white supremacy here in America. Like, they used to not be able to get streams of revenue because the banks would shut them down, but now there's crypto. So I think that's also really important for our audience to understand that not just are they like frauds and criminals, but there's also like a deep thread of misogyny and racism in the industry. And if you interact with the bros long enough, you're definitely going to run into it. And
Oh
as
yeah.
a woman myself, like I can't get away from it. These people will mansplain something to me that I have been investigating for 5 years that I know inside and out better than them, guaranteed, but they'll tell me I don't know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not even a case of scratch beneath the surface a bit, and then you'll see it. I mean, they make no secret about it. I mean, just the other day I was on Friend Tech, that kind of social kind of Web3 social media app thing. They launched their token quite recently and did a big airdrop or whatever. But in the kind of days before that, whoever was managing their social account just went, I mean, there's no other way to put it, but a racist tirade
Ugh.
against Indians, against Indian people. and it just opened the floodgates. The comments were just complete filth.
Yeah.
I called it out. I quote tweeted one of their just overtly racist posts. And the comments on that post were again just a deluge of people being like, what virtues, them on the nice side on end of things, people were saying, sort of virtue signaling and that kind of stuff. And then it just ranged to, just outright, very what I can only describe as, sexually aggressive, abuse basically. And these things are common. And this is this is a project. This is the official Twitter account of a crypto company, which is tweeting these things out, and with 100,000 followers or whatever on their Twitter account. So they make no secret about it. No, they know their audience. They know it's going to resonate with their audience well.
Yeah, a lot of you can tell right off the bat, a lot of times just by their profile picture or their handle. Like,
Yeah.
we're pretty gross. So sorry for
Yeah.
that extra little bonus content, everyone. But I had to ask, since you have been in those rooms, you have been at those conferences. So I really, really appreciate your time and again, everybody should pick up this book, Crypto Confidential by Jake Donoghue. It's going to be a smash. It's going to be a revelation. I really, really, really hope that the crypto bros get the message. There's no there. It's all scam. Y'all are victims. Just quit it already.
Jackie, thanks so much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Really great conversation.
Thanks, Jake. If anything you saw today makes you want to act, we need your help. Join us. Fill out the form below, and we'll get you onboarded into the National Coalition Against Crypto Mining. Thank you so much for watching.